I think it's Google and then
Yeah, Margaret. That's interesting. Right. I think,
So did you go to Marketplace?
A little bit later. You're on. So why don't we do this? Let's first give Steve, there's so okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I'd like to actually start out with Toby. If you want to share a word about the citizen space, why don't we start with you? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, Citizen Space is a co-working space directly next door. We have desks by the day, well, by the hour, the day, the week, or the month. So, if anybody interested, please drop by anytime.
Thank you for hosting us. And then I love time. So some people, yeah. Some people asked to be able to participate remotely, so we decided to stream the conversation.
Yeah.
No, I think this is good.
Yeah.
So thank you. So I'm curious. I'd love to kind of share a little bit about PM Fast Track and then also learn about the SFUX book club. Before we go there, just curious by show of hand, how many of us are designers and how many of us are architects? So designers. Okay. I seems very tentative about it.
Mine was both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the PM's side of the table. And then how about you, Mike and
Mike and Mike.
Mike?
I work in marketing. I do a lot of new product launches, but I'm not on the product side per se. I'm more of a creative consultant for agencies and brands. So I'm here actually because I'm looking to get into the products.
I'm working on a couple of concepts right now. I basically, in a nutshell, I would say I try to invent business models. So I look for opportunities, look for patterns, and try to fit the puzzles together and then go through a methodology of basically some fundamental stuff, trying to see if there's really big opportunities, if there's really sweet spots, and if you can be launched for pennies on the dollar and then turn into a billion.
So you're a product entrepreneur?
I think that will be better than what you're doing.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And yeah, so I want to thank the SFUX Book Club actually, because I met with Julia like a month ago, and because I wanted to read Hook for our product management group. I think it's a book that talks a lot about UX in many ways and design issues, but very relevant for product managers thinking about user behavior, how to influence actual user behavior. And so we had the idea of met over coffee and talked about bringing the two groups together. And so it's wonderful to see everybody here. And would you like to say a little bit about the group?
It's great having a group of people who love to read as much as I do, and it's nice to also have a group of people who read the same kind of things for work and also pleasure, and be able to talk about those things with everybody. So I really appreciate the group. And glad that people are here.
I'm curious, would someone like to share like what brought them out, what they're trying to get out of this reading Hook and then reading in a group together?
I'll be glad to. Sure. Yeah, so one of the things is that I'm working on a website. And so I think the last chain, I think we're doing something completely different than what I've seen out there in this particular space that we're going. But the one thing where I think our weak link is in getting people to submit content. And so I think that, I wanted to get some ideas from reading this book about how we can better incent people. And I did. I think I both in terms of ideas and in terms of other model websites to go look at. I feel like I got something out of it.
So for you were trying to find concepts of far.
Well, I think actually a second objective too was just to get people, how to get people to come back, because I really think, one of the things that he says, that Nir says, is that it's, there's something he said, this isn't just about design, it isn't just about building products, but there's a psychology element to it as well. Mm-hmm. And so, that I really took from that, and so, just wanted to learn more about that, because as we build our website, and actually it's 3/4 built already, we want to take that into account.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I can give some background about myself. I'm kind of in the same position. I'm sort of built a demo for an app which looks at reviews from short, almost Twitter-like perspective, and makes it easy for you to submit your own review with just one click. I heard about online. And then, about maybe 6-7 days ago, I was at this event, the country to tell, and Neil Gale was actually speaking there.
Yep.
So he went through his presentation.
Okay.
In the whole book model. So I just want to take that as an ahead.
You should have a section for us, right?
I could go through his presentation. That's what you want. But I won't be able to give you any insights on my own.
Thanks for sharing. So let's just, Julia and I talked about general flow for the night. We'll be flexible. We're a small group, right? And we're here to learn and talk with each other and learn from each other and just apply the concepts on whatever projects we might be working on. But we thought that in the first basically half, the next, I guess, about 30, 45 minutes or so, we could actually go through reiterating the core concepts from each chapter, if you will, or section. Trigger action, variable reward, investment, those types of concepts. But I'd like to break off into small groups, and given the number of people we have, maybe we could break into 3 groups of about 5, and try to actually apply some of those on we have some screenshots of different apps as well as TripIt app, which Julia could tell you a little bit about TripIt, I guess.
I'll put that later.
And yeah, so for the latter half, I thought that we would actually try to apply those concepts, do a little bit of an analysis on the spot about looking at some screenshots, what have the product managers or the designers of that particular app, what have they done in terms of reflecting some of the same concepts, right? Do you see some frictions that could be reduced to, for instance, increase the ability, or do you see certain calls to action that are good triggers, as you see in the book? In many cases, you might actually see an accent of an opportunity now that you've read the book about this is how they can create a habit-forming behavior. It seems like a missed opportunity. But we want to go through that process of just looking, analyzing, observing. So that's sort of the plan for tonight. Any questions?
What was the book you all were reading?
Oh, it's called Hooked.
H-O-O-K-E.
Yep. Nir, N-I-R, Yuval, I think E-R.
E-Y-A.
I knew that was Y. Thank you.
Hey, so did you say at the end of the latter of the session, we have a certain specific website or thing that we're looking at?
We'll try to put them on some screen so that we all have a common basis for it. I'd love to, we'll just have to play it by ear, have the logos, but I'd love to be able to break into small groups, talk about it amongst yourselves, and then go back into the circle and sort of debrief together. Okay?
I have a question. Sure. I didn't read the book. I saw it about a month ago or so. I got like a synopsis of it. So you're making like an interesting word here. How to get people, or the premise of the book is to get people habit-formed, how to do product and service, right? I was wondering what his premise was. Was it like me, or was it identifying? Did he actually in the book identify what were those elements that,
That's a good question. It's a process, is I think maybe what I it's a if there's certain things that have to be present, and at certain stages you go through, and then you can think about it as fundamentally a reinforcing process, because you can go through the stages, maybe around the circle once you think about it, and then every time you go around the circle, it's more reinforcement, it gets stronger and stronger, is basically what until something new comes along. But the more times you go around the circle, the greater your odds of getting someone hooked until something 10 times better comes along, basically.
So Mike has an entrance to the book. This is actually perfect, right? Because when we talk about the circle, we'll have to fill in the picture. And so let's break that down. Let's begin to kind of go over the concepts that we read and fill in a little bit of the blanks around this framework. Do you have some thoughts to start us off? Or?
It was interesting years and since my camera, but I almost want to like show and have to walk through the model. Like, I'm trying to remember some of these examples in the book, like Pinterest is a common one. I'm blanking, there were some more, but I almost wonder if we should bring up Pinterest. I can bring it up on my computer and we could look at it and walk through the process as you were calling it. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Does that sound good to people? Just so it's sort of hard to talk abstractly when you don't have anything
yeah, I
to
agree.
relate to.
That'd be great to have some tangible examples to look at.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I should.
Oh, yeah, right. Let's see what I can do here.
I'm curious while we're doing that, do any of you guys actually work for a team that's sort of looked at, it doesn't have to be right, but some of the same kind of psychology and talk about as a team creating habit-forming behavior? Anyone has that experience with working? Yeah?
Yeah.
Give us an example.
A very small mom and pop called AIG Network. $1 billion insurance is small. And our team we were designing an enterprise solution for claims for across the United States. And each state has a different use case in insurance because of the insurance commissioners and rules and regs and your first party, your third party insurance. And we had a team of about 6 people. And that's how I got introduced to this book. This was awesome. And we literally went through the steps of, like the whole book was about this thick. And like I said, we started at why. Why does and the use case is going to be your internal people receiving the calls, incoming calls, to how they route those calls, to your nurse managers who are outside that loop, to basically research, design, test, iterate, scale. There's lots of contextual inquiries, lots of heuristic evaluations, lots of putting that in a pot and boiling it. Right now, you start getting close, and then your early wireframes, and then your annotated wireframes with annotated wireframes, and then those are the handoffs to the designers who started creating the user interface from those frames. And you can point to every single annotation, where the research came from, and how we arrived there. Which was, all, huge.
So just looking at their home screen. Is there anything that anyone has seen from the process or the?
Well, actually, maybe it would make sense to review what the process is first.
Oh, that's right, I forgot, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. So,
There's a step before this.
yes, you're right. So,
So there's, the first thing I think is triggers.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it has to be something that triggers someone to go.
Right, and then the thing is, right, there's external triggers and there's internal triggers.
So external.
The first thing is like someone sends you an email or you see an app icon on your smartphone, or, there's gotta be something outside
Well,
of
let's
yourself.
focus with Pinterest. What would that be for Pinterest? Give us an example of an internal first.
Someone which, or an external, someone for an external, because that's the first,
Okay.
is someone could post something on Facebook. And so someone that you're familiar with, that you're friends with on Facebook, but you're not a Pinterest user, someone could post something on Facebook that then you see, that then causes you to go to Pinterest.
Okay.
What about the brand as a trigger?
That's totally. The word of mouth.
Yeah, totally. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to the page, even if that didn't happen, if let's say you just heard about something in passing and you went there, and the only thing you really see is the logo.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think that could also serve as a trigger.
I think a trigger is just would be defined as anything that gets you to Pinterest.com and try to sign in.
Right,
Doesn't matter what it is.
right.
I don't think there is such thing as an internal trigger to start. That's more like later in the process. That's you thinking like, oh, I should go to Pinterest.
Or you could say, I mean, maybe you can just use the best example, but you could say, I really want to post all of my photos somewhere and I'm not happy with what I'm using right now. Maybe I can get Google search posting pictures.
Oh,
No, the internal one, for the person who's going to check the system, says that.
it's still,
Actually,
it's still like so, yeah.
Yeah,
It's still Google telling you. Yeah.
So I didn't really go, but there's like a 30-minute video of your presentation.
Yeah.
But in that presentation, it said what the internal triggers are oftentimes emotions, and they're oftentimes loneliness or
Yeah.
depression, or like you were just bored, right? And then you wanted to kill that time between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. And you were like, well, we're gonna go. And then it's like, oh, Pinterest. And you go look for something different.
Yeah.
And you look for something
in the book, they gave an example of email, right? So if you're checking your email as a habit, it's like, okay, what is the thing? And so it was basically what their point was, is you have to ask why 5 times. And then after you ask why 5 times, and so it basically started out, well, she wants to see, what email, who's contact her. But at the end of the process, it was really that the person in the example, she didn't want to feel disconnected, right? Didn't want to, and especially if someone needed her. Someone needed her, and she couldn't get in touch with her, and then ultimately she didn't want to feel disconnected. So to your point, it's a psychological need. And so usually what happens is it's external for a while until you associate it with after some degree of familiarity, you associate it with something psychological, which then becomes internal. Yeah.
But the external trigger still exists later on, but it's like, oh, I got a notification badge on the app, so it's like that kind of thing. Or I got an email that said my friend re-pinned my thing or whatever it is, and that triggers you to go back into the service.
Yeah.
They'll continue to exist. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, David.
Do any of you all actually use Pinterest?
Who uses Pinterest?
Yeah. And what do you use Pinterest for?
I use it to just sort of catalog all of my interests, just from the standpoint of, I don't know, I mean, I'm into digital abstract art, I do it as a hobby, so I just sort of use it as a dumping ground for posting ideas, and then it has a password protection type secret thing you can set up, like if you wanted to do that, like share visual ideas with clients. I've done that with startups. It's kind of fun.
So you would use Pinterest over Tumblr, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't compare the two. I think that I like it as it's kind of a cool brainstorming tool as well. You can bring multiple people into it.
You got like categories.
Yeah.
It's kind of old-fashioned concept of like a mood board. So it's starting with it. So yeah. Mood board. Yeah.
Yes, I hadn't figured out, like, I had so much time on it, but I hadn't really figured out the use of it. No, I'm not saying, and I don't mean to knock it either, but just as, like, it seems to be more for, like, I can see it for design, something like that, but in terms of, like, if you're trying to get information, if it's not, at least, like, if you're any kind of research, unless you're checking out, you're looking for ideas for, like, a UI or something, it could be very useful for that. But, if it was something like, if I'm trying to research something about like any kind of factual stuff.
Yeah.
I think in many ways this is the perfect case study for what the book is diving deeper into, which is there's not necessarily a conscious decision to use something.
Yeah.
The designers have designed it so well that it has conditioned our behavior to go use something, even when the use case may not be completely clear. I wanted to dive deeper actually because Lyle, you pointed out the kind of the parallel existence of external and internal triggers. So like it's just anybody, like what would you kind of, as a product owner or product designer, what's kind of your roadmap? Like what would you want to happen between those external and internal triggers to build on what we're talking about?
I think one thing that comes to mind immediately has got to be empathy for the user. That they need to get within the first few seconds that you get them and that this is for them and they need to get into it and explore it. If you ever had that experience where you go somewhere and someone says, it's a great site, you got to check it out. This is really cool, and you go there and it's like, I don't know what this is. I don't get it. What is this? And something that may be true for people with looking at Pinterest. Some people look at that and might say, I don't know what that is.
That was me.
Yeah, like for me, also I just want to add that like we can all ask questions, right? I'm just another guy who read a book, so I didn't write it. So. But for me, like the fascinating relationship was if I'm building something, like yes, you start with the external triggers, but what is your roadmap? Like how do you actually get to a point where independent of the external triggers, or you tap that internal need, right? And that's transition. And of course, the framework is getting you there, but that's just a fascinating thought process of how you start on day one, but then you're moving off of that into very different kind of world, psychological and emotional internal triggers.
So I have a question here. Like, does this put the premise that initially in a product you're actually stressing the external triggers and hoping later on that turns into somehow an internal trigger, or is it the other way around? You start hoping that there's an existing internal trigger which you reinforce with external triggers. Is there a position that the book takes?
Right, that's somewhat what I was asking to the beginning.
I think it can sort of like on the product, because that's the lamest answer ever. But because it depends on if it's like interest is a lot different example than like an enterprise thing, right? So I think it's going to be some combination of them. But I think ultimately you have to have something that people to form a habit, So like to solve the issue, I love I was talking to someone else really about this concept of products could either be vitamins or painkillers. When he talks, he probably did the same thing when he talked at your thing. Yeah. He goes like, what do people think Facebook is a vitamin, like a nice to have type thing, or is it a painkiller? And people, like a bunch of people will raise their hand on vitamin thinking like, oh yeah, I don't want to eat it, but it exists. But he argues it's a painkiller because it's solving the pain of boredom or loneliness that he uses for Facebook. And like, which is true when you think about it, you're like, well, I'm by myself and I can at least interact with my friends who aren't in this room with me via Facebook. So if you have something like that built into it, then I think the rest of the stuff is easier. And you're not forcing it.
Okay. Based idea of what happens if you don't have these triggers? Like, would people ever go back to your app? In the idea of interest, you're seeing things. If you never reminded people, oh, you've got all this stuff in Pinterest, or oh, stuff's happening, it's the fear of missing out. And what would happen without that? Would you still have that user? Would you retain? And I think the answer is know.
Mhm.
So it's this idea that you need to be, open minded, inviting people to come back and explore, spend some time in your app. It's all about engagement.
Would you like us to take us to the next step beyond trigger than to we're actually building on that thought?
And I walk with that.
So using this as an example, what's the
It's very interesting. You're a millennial. You're gonna have different. Instead of investment or how you want to,
I think it's the same. Like, fundamentally, it's like, oh, I did something, whatever, and something's happened since. I'm gonna check on it. Be it I planted some seeds in my back garden, and what they're doing, versus I added something to the board, and my friends are commenting. It's just the same thing.
Or
It's
you
the
want
only
to
thing
find
that-
things to add to your board.
Right. Or all of a sudden you're like, oh, that project I started, I was building this thing, I had some ideas I put in there, and you just throw it through, oh, I saw this thing when I was grocery shopping today, that would be a perfect addition. It's like that kind of trigger and habits we trying to form. Yeah.
So what's the next step for us to begin to build that habit?
I'm sorry, I don't want to be off topic again, but I don't want to use the excuse that I give you, but I'm hoping, did you have like a Maslow hierarchy of charts or something close to that, saying that these are the stuff that there is?
They talked about 3 basic needs.
Yeah.
At one point, we did talk about 3
Okay.
basic needs. Yeah, there's like approval from others, self-fulfillment, like you're getting better, and then there was a third one, which I think was,
There's the hunt.
yeah,
Unsubscribe itself.
yeah, maybe that's right. Hunt, tribe, so hunt, it's like if you, exactly, you'll doggedly pursue it. Yeah, hunt, tribe, and self, that's exactly right.
To get there, because we're just triggering. Let's build our way into it, and then we'll get the full system.
So if you were to go here, what would you do next?
Well, I mean, yeah, so does someone want to kind of walk us through how action concepts from the book would apply to the site?
I was like totally off. I went to
No, sure.
So it's like, but basically just reading, to initiate all action. Motivation, ability to complete the desired action, and a trigger of those things exactly. So looking at this is their trigger, and this signing something. That's the first one, but and also there's a message. It says image start selection.
Actually, one thing, I don't know.
Oh, sure. Okay.
There was, I remember, I think it was in under the action that they gave the fog model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was basically,
Like a project in the background. Or, yeah, expect them to make like fix most logging issues pretty easy.
That kind of wise, using images that you really can't see, but you can understand something is there, and you want to go beyond to get inside what's there.
The other thing is the time, so if you kind of read the face, it's 45 seconds, and then it's like a 25, 30 numbers. These are fun people that
Or would that be part of the hunt belong to a tribe? Tribe.
although that kind of comes in there. Yes. So it says, well, I think with the motivation, you said motivation, okay, well, yeah, so this is basic.
Yeah.
So, and would the self be start basically the collection? That's for me. You do something for me.
He talks about those in the context of the next So that might be like a preview of the next one. That should be. Yeah.
Can we sign in?
What is the?
That's very well done.
What's the website? If you just give me more.
Yeah, I was trying to think of this right now.
Action is. Sign in for action.
One of my. So I can read it.
We just need to see your full accounts, all details, passwords.
I see.
Yeah.
That's good. A general question about this type of homepage is, maybe it's my age, probably is, but these kind of homepages drive me completely fast. Why? Because you can't sample the website. Like, sign up, you know, I don't know what to sign up.
Well, they're trying to direct you to do an action, of course.
Yeah, but you know, you get, like, sign up for what?
Yeah.
That's what kills me.
Find out.
So they would know.
I think that's it. They figured out that it works well enough. That we're going, like,
I think maybe
That does that too.
they've got enough of people signing up without knowing.
Yeah.
So it's more advantageous.
Yeah. So I'm
You're probably in the
I'm the educator.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of how
Yeah.
brands are not showing empathy for the user. You know, and there's several
But
other,
there could be options, and you could be like, do this or sample.
yeah, I
It's not
agree.
like empathy though. If anything, it's actually showing empathy. Knowing that the vast majority of people that come to the website, not even from everyone, will already know what it is and know what they're signing up.
Somebody
We're
was
not launching with this view. This is not like version 4.1. This is like version 73 and a half.
But I think he's sort of disagreeing.
I don't know, it depends on if you want to expand your user base, the people that have just kind of heard about it in passing.
I would say a lot of people are gonna be not landing on the homepage the first time. They're gonna see like, oh, a friend did something or whatever. Yeah, and click the link. And it's like pinterest.com/whatever.
There are other landing pages than just going to pinterest.com. Like if you come via certain social media channels, you might see a completely different page.
Well, let's use the framework. So Luis, do you want to remind us of the product behavior model? Behavior equals, right?
So number one, sufficient motivation.
Motivation.
2, ability, direct action.
Okay.
3, a trigger must be present.
Trigger, right? So motivation, ability, and trigger. So I think that's kind of one framework we can apply as a group here. I think you complained in some ways about that landing page. You can't sample things. So for you, it sounds like it might affect your motivation, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I end up going elsewhere to read an article about what it's all about, because they're not letting me do it there.
And hopefully to build on our earlier conversation.
Which is like, not, creates friction.
Right, friction, which kind of is going to erode your motivation, but to our earlier discussion, a lot of the motivation was derived from external cues elsewhere, not on the landing page. And once you arrive on the landing page, I think this behavior goal is trying to drive the action and the trigger piece, right? You had the trigger. You don't want a whole lot of action where you end up on the landing page because you want to sign up and you're going through a bunch of carousel screens, for example. I mean, I think that's the kind of discussion that we can have around why it might be designed the way it is, right?
Yeah, they figure you're already seeing something, you're being referred by somebody, and you're ready to go.
And I think let's just point to build on that.
Yeah, I think just one thing, assumption too is that a person already log into Facebook, and then Facebook storage like, oh yeah, okay, I have to sign up on Facebook. That's pretty much all it wants to do. Yeah, I think the friction to get people to do a Facebook off or give up their email is so low these days compared to, well, Facebook wasn't but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's so much easier these days. So it's like, okay, click, all right.
So I still believe Doug's assumption that when I go to a place, I would like to get a sampler before I have to give up my information. My email and my sign is still valuable. I would want to just give it up just to see.
Sure, I agree.
I would never do it.
With the three oldest people.
And I think, you know, what we said.
With the three oldest.
And what I want to add to that discussion is, it's probably actually age independent. I mean, this is a trade-off, right? You're always going to, when you're building a product, you're going to deal with, and I'd be curious to know what the designers think, but this is how the product managers think. You're going to have trade-offs, and you're making a trade-off. Your end goal is B, the behavior. You want some sort of behavior in the user, but you're going to have to weigh these different reservations on the one hand, but try to lower the friction, right? This person, and they're optimizing for a certain action here, but they decided that landing page with just one click button, making the bet that for a majority of users, it's a very low hurdle that they're going to sign up a lot of users. Right? So.
Yeah, and even having a small thing in the corner that says, check us out here, might distract some of the people that were ready to just sign up. And suddenly they see that and it gets broken.
But to your point, your reservations are valid. Again, this is a trade-off. I'm curious to see if some designers have additional insight or input into that conversation.
I'm surprised that designers think differently. Like, I mean, we did a product, we need some audio to get put together. We just have to run this person thing and like take a bunch of pictures without ever signing out. Like, they're not even going to come back. Like, we do this. So that's actually a frustrating experience for whoever did that. So I would say like they are compromising like upfront, like they need to meet certain criteria.
key part is how many. It's not, is this a frustrating page for someone? It's like, is this a frustrating page for the majority of the users, or more importantly, the majority of the types of users we actually want to attract to the site? So at some point, someone sat down and go, okay, we're looking at primarily this type of user. This is where they hang out. This is how we're going to target them. And when they land on our page, we really care about just getting in and seeing what this content looks like. So on Pinterest, you can customize the experience immediately when you sign in to Facebook. You can show them, here's what your friends are doing right now. It's a far more compelling experience than just, here's a completely zero data state. And so they made the choice to have that initial interaction be as frictionless as possible. Not because they didn't care about alienating people like Doug. That's a different use case for them, and it's something they care about and they handle differently. Their initial push is like, okay, we're going to get in the door, we're going to show them something cool, and then they're going to stick around. And maybe they'll acquire the Dougs of the world through word of mouth and spreading virally rather than this. I heard about this Pinterest thing. What's that?
One interesting contrast is House. You guys look at House? Yeah. Because it's just, you can just put tons of stuff without ever signing up, right? But maybe it's a different demographic, right?
You're at a different stage too. So at least in Neer's talk, he talked about the difference in Twitter homepage over the course of many years. Yeah. And it used to totally explain everything. You could go through multiple things like, oh yeah, this is what it's all about. Now it's like, see what's going on, sign up. That's it. It's like there's hardly anything there because they're at a scale where people get to the house.
Yeah, House is a little bit more.
Well, look at the use case for House. I've never heard of it. I'm looking at it. This is. It looks like it is created for people who are or will be homeowners.
Yep.
So, and this is more utilitarian.
Yep.
I don't mind what I'm saying is that. I say utilitarian. You scroll up a little bit. Even though they're selling products for homeowners. So homeowners who are doing things to enhance the value of their house, primarily doing one for aesthetic reasons, and then two to increase property value. This company is very profitable. Yeah. Yes. Utilitarian. Because, whereas Pinterest, scrapbooking, showing my thing, I don't know about the security piece to share with other product owners, and by notable. But this right here is, you own a house, you buy a fixer-upper or something done. You come here, you're like, okay, I already have a certain nut invested in what I already, so I'm trying to build on what I already have. This is going to aesthetically please me, please my living situation, and ideally increase the value of my property. Pinterest, it may be utilitarian in a
It's more social.
whimsical way,
Yeah.
or
There's not direct correlation.
so, or even aesthetic external pleasing. I like that. It is that I know. In my humble opinion.
You can click pictures.
Yeah, but I mean, this right here, I see this, I'm like, okay, yes, this cost, this, my house was $750, if I do this, you know, I put these little things on here, so I'm getting some milk, hopefully, and everybody else does in the neighborhood, raise the whole, yeah. Now, this makes sense.
Well, I think the thing that it indicates to me in the comparison between the two is this. One of these is putting the needs and the interests of the user ahead of the needs of the company. When I go to Pinterest or other sites where I see that you have to put in your email address or your Facebook account, log in, I think this is a cheap way for the company to put their needs first and get your information without really thinking about, there's probably dozens of websites out there who have a much more natural and intuitive flow for getting that information. And if they've got it right, they can get that information. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's simply people who work in the text understand it. I mean, have you ever gone to a website where you start to build a profile, and instead of asking for your email address and your personal information first, they start out with something that feels much more natural, and then later they say, okay, now finally just give us your, you know.
I actually just finished doing a bunch of research on almost exactly that. The metric was LinkedIn versus Facebook, and the idea was that people really don't care. I find it very hard to find people who cared about giving up their LinkedIn login or data because they felt that it was curated and public facing already. Whereas Facebook, because Facebook has kind of matured over a period of time and things have changed, no one really knows what the hell is on. Facebook's like, crap, did I share that photo from 3 years ago of me at that party with that? Oh wow, no, I don't want anyone to see that. And it's just like a visceral reaction many people had to just signing in with Facebook. Because it's just, what the hell is that? Like, what do they get? There's a little box and it has some text that kind of explains that, but it doesn't show the pictures that they're getting to see or anything else that's actually tangible to the user. So in terms of asking for Facebook, your location. Actually support that within the last 2 weeks.
I'm here, I'm kind of late to the conversation, but I think the point is well taken, but it depends on the mode of access for the person. So if I'm accessing via desktop, I'm less likely to enter into my Facebook and digital, etc. If I'm on a mobile device, I'm 5x more likely to just say, link me into Facebook because I don't have to type in they're pretty much polycopy.
Well, I guess the other point that I think I want to make is that what does it do not only to the user experience, but that sense of narrative with the brand and, you know, that overall experience when you go to someplace and, you know, maybe you see a background image or the logo and, oh, this looks really cool, but, oh, I have to put in my user information first. What does that do to the sense of empathy and narrative for what the rest of the experience might be like?
For the user, if the company who is asking for the credentials is actually doing a really good job, what they'll do is they'll pull demographic data, much like you get on Amazon recommendations. So what they'll do is they'll try to pull as much data as they can on your Facebook, your login, your LinkedIn credentials, and they'll look at maybe what some of your friends have bought, similar demographic, and try to serve you similar things on your first visit. And after that, we'll continue to learn about you. That's the theory of what best practice should be.
It's a theory. Wait, say that again. You're saying it's a theory of best practice?
Well, because every site doesn't, you know, pull all the data, and doesn't have the same algorithms to be able to pull all of that information. What were you gonna say?
I was saying there was like a study, well, years ago, this was what we I think it was like Amazon. They changed their talking about specific. But like, initially it had people like sign up, upfront to buy something, and then they changed it to like that to the last step of your purchase process, where you like enter information on that. And that is not huge after they changed that. That was before like all the social stuff was popular. Where like, yeah, like you can get more information about a person based on who you are. So I feel like what they're doing here is probably depending on the utility you're going to get, like connecting, not the house, like the interest, like the utility you're getting, like connected to your Facebook. Like it's create a better experience once you land there. Not like I say other thing from the community perspective, it's also they're making you be responsible for what you are doing. Instead of like kind of social media advantages of not thinking about the crazy stuff.
There's actually some dissonance between what the book says in this, because there's the idea of, as you were just saying, information and then saying anything like I think that needs to be said. And as soon as they get into that information, they're committed. They have ownership of it. Versus this is a login as well. They're pretty much exactly opposites.
I like the Amazon Club where I can go and search and find out what I want and look and come back.
Add to cart, everything.
Until I'm ready to shop. Because it feels like in a store. You go into a grocery store, you put things in your cart. I don't want this kind of milk, this bread is bad for my child, or I want this. You know what? I gotta go. My wife's home. I gotta go. I can leave this cart right here. Or I can come back. Like, you know what? No, I can come back here and grab it. Now check out.
Yeah. I think the point, just to support what you just said, is that when I think about habit-forming products just in the real world, I don't feel a great sense of hierarchical structure. It's like, hey, today I want to use it, great, I'll use it whatever I want. And if I need support or input or backup from the company that I'm getting it from, then I'll check in with them and communicate with them. But really, think about the things in the real world that you use every day that you love. There's no one there that's going to say, okay, first of all, we're going to need your email, and we want you to do it like this, and do it like this, and do it like this. The other thing is that I'm positive, you look at Gartner or Forrester and some of these other places that have done research on millennials I'm saying this from what I've read, I can't cite any specific studies, but millennials are leaning against hierarchical structure. They're looking at things that we've all become accustomed to as being optional. So it's just another point I want. I don't think that the age of
motivation for
what we're making.
The fundamental design and motivation behind the two differences, the Pinterest and House examples, are so different because House can do things like, I'm in growth, learning growth marketing, and they can do SEO stuff. And people can land on a page about something for their bedroom or whatever. Whereas Pinterest could care less about that. They're a social network. It's a totally different motivation. They're like, get into our social network. We can send you your email campaign and that kind of stuff to make sure you retain and all that kind of stuff. Whereas House are like, just shop some products and if you buy something, awesome. We're going to give you an amazing experience on how to buy that object, whatever it is. But it's totally different concepts. So it's hard to
retention. They can't think of retention or any of these.
Not the same
user management. I think they call them until someone's making an account, until someone's
they
need to run those.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise,
when you think of the use case, if you're using Twitter or Facebook or Pinterest for that matter, you log in and then you're just logged in. And that's it, right? So you may go back to the homepage because you got logged out for some reason, but you're on an app and you never log in again, right? You just use it. And so it's once you get them past that step and using it a little bit, then you're like, all right, we got this one. Next, kind of. But it's it's a different concept in House. Sites like that.
Looking at that book, the diagram, you're already able to the investment. This might be interesting behavior for an app, a mobile application, to actually do the functionality like an Amazon, allow a social user to actually use things or access things to a certain threshold, and then when they want to interact with things, then require them to actually sign in. Because you've already gotten you've already got their triggers, they're in it, action, they're navigating through it. What's the next one? Variable, what's that?
Variable rewards.
Variable reward. There's a variable reward. Why, if I sign in, I get this. Kind of like, I'm going to show, like barbecue. You're driving down the road, you're hungry, whatever it is, you smell it. You're like, no, I'm hungry. You're going to turn around and go to that spot. There's a variable reward.
Actually, but you know what's interesting is that you're right, there's a reward, but the interesting thing is that in the context of this book, I think the way they're talking about variable reward is you're always going to get something different. So it's more about the variable than it is about the reward.
Yeah. There's a unexpected rewards release. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, they release drugs in your head that are
Exactly. Of the anticipation of not knowing what it is.
Yes.
You're going to get something, but you don't know what.
That's like, think of scrolling Facebook or something like that. You're like, all of a sudden you see like a funny picture or something. Oh, cool. Funny picture.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, they use this a lot in games.
Yeah.
Like in games.
Yeah.
And most other verticals or industries don't hear your games.
So if you're receiving a variable reward and you don't know what that reward's going to be, there's still excitement.
Yeah, there's anticipation.
Yeah.
Here's one thing about you just walk in your favorite restaurants, they come up to you and say, we haven't seen you forever. Dinner's on us today. Whoa. You're on Facebook, tweeting, calling your sister.
Well, here's the opposite in terms of like, if you want to take the context of your book, the way they use variable reward, if I had to say what's the antonym of this, it's predictability. And predictability is bad in this context.
So the use cases for Pinterest and House are actually quite similar.
They are.
And what they're trying to get the users to do, would you say is similar or different?
Different.
Like, who creates the content for House? Is it curators or only, or is it users?
No, it's the architects and the design. I'm an architect. It's the architects and the interior designers.
It's
photos and all their stuff.
So like that, Anna says.
But it's not paid staff of the company, right?
No, they let the users.
You guys.
Put all that stuff in there.
Exactly.
They write some articles.
Like who curates that? There's a staff that curates that. Right?
Oh yeah, there's a staff. Yeah.
Are there people in Pinterest who are curating other than the users themselves?
No.
So the users put up
There's some
a
level of like staff picks, like here's a board of the stuff we think is awesome, but that's just I'm thinking it's purely a metric driven, like this has got a lot of page views, it pops up in someone's feed, they go, oh that's cool, staff pick. Like the admin Pinterest account will have a staff pick button rather than a pick button.
So I'm simply trying to steer us to the fact that the behaviors, how the designers and the product managers built this app, their goals and user behaviors are more similar than I think we might realize. So to build on that thought, does anybody want to kind of walk us through maybe the rewards portion of how it might work for House? Like, give us an example of what you find here in terms of hunt or tribe or self. Yeah, that's right.
It's probably mostly content.
You said hunt?
I mean, help us.
Yeah.
So help the group understand kind of their thinking
I
process.
didn't use the book. Yeah, I didn't think to look on YouTube. I just read the intro on Amazon. I mean, if you're, like, you think about house or Pinterest? Because house, I mean, people are thinking like, I want to remodel my house. I want to look for some ideas, some cool lights or some cool floor, surface or whatever, a cool refrigerator. And so they start hunting around for stuff like that. But maybe they want like just interior design ideas, furniture, So it's probably a lot of hunting.
I don't know that the most common use for a site like this is the someday user. They don't necessarily have home now that they're specifically looking to remodel, and they're kind of thinking, oh, I would like to have a nice house, so let's imagine that. And let's, get to that point digitally or virtually.
I think the bulk of my impression, the bulk of the users are actually actively, I think, okay, the next year we're going to do this, or the next, they start collecting ideas, and then you can make one question. Because the people that started the site wanted to remodel their house, they couldn't find a good online source to look at all this stuff in one place. So they just kind of, they hadn't, detected, so they built the site, kind of as a mono thing, and then made it for business. But
sure, I mean, whatever, starting the site, I'd argue, I think a lot of the people that use websites like this are aspirational rather than immediate, like within this time frame.
We could do the research, right?
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see.
Yeah. And of course, only after a while did they figure out, I don't know how early they thought about it, but it was only after a while that they started putting in, cutting money off of it. But it's like product placement in a movie. You look at a nice photo, you think, that's nice. And then you open your mouse, it's like, oh, look, I can find out more about this.
They say to tell you how much of it.
Anyway.
So there's a greater sense of purpose with house.
Yeah, I think it's more focused. I don't know if they get as much variable reward. I think they're variable reward week or year. Because you're borrowing, a lot of people focus in on things they're looking for. Oh yeah, Pinterest, you're like just looking around with fun stuff.
Could variable reward here be considered an object for your home that you couldn't find elsewhere? I mean, that you're not going to get from IKEA something. I mean, I'm looking at these
it's even more
interesting
simple
products
than
and-
that. It's just like, that is aesthetic.
Yeah, these pictures are gorgeous. I mean, there's
I want that.
there's a seaside garden. I would love that. I mean, some of these things that I'm looking at here are just distracting me from you.
But on the other side, a gamer who's inside their site, no matter what they're doing, there could be several variable rewards for them as well that can equally be as strong as the seaside house here, or things on this site. So I still think it's very contextual for the basis.
Yeah, I guess there's variable reward in this example. But
It might be some people that try this, like we're saying, aspirational.
So Dave, the question, in Pinterest, since they talked about unexpected reward,
Who talked about unexpected rewards? Who talked about unexpected rewards?
We were just been talking about a variable
reward.
Yeah.
In Pinterest, what would be a variable reward?
You're going and just start.
Oh, you start scrolling down. You start scrolling down, and you don't know what to see.
You can't stop.
It's a matter of surprise.
You're not going to be immediately, that's coming next, like satisfied
Yeah,
with
exactly.
every single picture.
Like Instagram.
One thing would be of immense value to your interest. You go, oh, that's awesome, that's made my day. Versus,
Yeah, the interesting thing about it is I haven't quite figured out how this is actionable. Most of the stuff is not. I think it's just,
I think you guys just touched upon it, right? For example, with the beautiful picture of the house, or that's what users are also drawn to Pinterest for. There's a sense of anticipation and hitting of the releasing of the dopamine and expectation of something that the user or the member finds either beautiful, or they're looking for something, some idea that they might borrow or steal for their project. And I think that's when you're designing an app or when you're building a product, that's the line of thought, right? It's not to put a pretty picture because you may not be working on a photo sharing site. But that's the line of thought that you want to be thinking about. How do you create, and for the user, for your audience, your particular set of audience, what is that point that makes most sense? Do you want to appeal to that sense of a tribe? Do you want to appeal to the sense of kind of self-fulfillment? All of the above.
I think all the above. The more you can do, the better. Maybe you can.
If you're designing a social, consumer-facing something, I think the tribe is very relevant. A stronger driver.
Yeah.
if I am doing something house or something like that, for me, it's more important to me than external people living it.
Yeah.
But there's still influencing factors there. So in the homeowner situation, it might be the average value of houses in your area you want to increase to a certain point. You can appeal to that. And it's not so much something you do from a product point to increase engagement, but it's something you would do from like a marketing or copy standpoint to just make them think, oh, actually maybe I should spend some more time on this website, maybe I should engage with it more because I want to increase the value of my property. That's just to speak to the example you gave earlier.
Well, at a house, most of the value of the land, the external things, are the stuff inside the house. But the house looks like it's all-
Let's build on this discussion actually, and let's actually look at the site. House.
Okay.
Since this is kind of a lesser known and maybe a little bit more interesting to tear apart.
Plenty of outside pictures.
Could we scroll down to where you were just now on the house?
That one.
And scroll down a little bit to where we were right here. This is pretty good. So let's drill deeper, right? We're talking about, is this appealing to tribe? Is this appealing to self? It's mostly, I think, but let's look at what's on the screen. What do you guys see?
They really want the action of sign up. That thing is not going
Okay, well, let's assume that we've signed up and that modal is going to go away. Do we see? I see stars. So somebody help me understand the stars and how that relates to what we're talking about.
You say sparks?
Product ratings.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, it's credibility, your recommendations.
Or reviewer.
Yes, credibility, right?
The credibility coming from the seller.
Well, yeah, it's still credibility. You can doubt the credibility, but 5 stars. If it only had 1 star, would you believe it more?
Yeah, if I liked it.
The stars,
But if I saw 1 star,
No, here's the
I
thing, yeah.
think it's pretty crappy.
but the stars are for the person or the account that's doing the review, right?
No, it's for the
review.
the product. The reviewer's thoughts and recommendations about that product.
You want me to read more, or should we stay?
Sure, let's go in, take a look.
So,
No, I don't know, see, it says 4 reviews, review me. Are those reviews by the person or of the person?
it's by the person. It's of the company. So that's why it's dubious. That's why it's like stars.
When you see the actual reviewers here, I think this is a better, if you go to like.
Yeah, this review is done.
Yeah, because that's the main portion of the site, that was like a photo.
Well, they're reviewing the.
This is a company that is offering a product on the website. Users have reviewed the company. I purchased something from this company. It arrived in 2 days, A+, A+, A+.
This is probably like
But on
4
the
brands, so.
previous page,
Like Yelp.
what's in that company's products?
Like on Yelp.
So what's your point, what you're kind of pointing out is the social aspect,
Which is Tribe.
try, that's right.
It's a relatively small part.
Couldn't it be both, though? I mean, looking at this, I'm thinking, I feel like this is a site that provides a sense of, you get a greater sense of mission and purpose, and there's also a feeling like, you're getting towards a sense of destination. Whereas with Pinterest, I don't know if you always had that. It's sort of optional. I mean,
Pinterest doesn't pay.
Right. It's never ending. I mean, it's great if you want to just surf for ideas.
But that's the kind of the point of the model, that like, it's not supposed to be, right? It's a unity symbol of the model. But it's also like the motivation to go back in, or the trigger to go back in, is, in the case of Pinterest, a lot different than what it is for House.
Right.
So like House, we're like, oh, I need, we're gonna redo this room, and I want to find something. Whereas with Pinterest, it's like, I'm bored, or, this TV show is boring, so I'm going to put through my phone. The different motivation.
It's the difference between I've got 5 minutes to spare, I've got an Instagram time to spare, or exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes.
So like, I mean, I'm just like as a designer or a product person, you have to obviously have, okay, that's why the framework's good. You know, based on what our product is, we can, you know, cater to these type of people.
The actual term is, but it's one is probably discovery and the other is more search related, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, search, you're gonna go and say, I'm doing a room, and it's gonna, or the living room, and I'll show you different things about the living room. Pictures, you just go on there and it's, wow, there's somebody's living room. You may run in front into a living room, you may run into a bathroom, so, but it's different, I guess, search and discovery.
So Pinterest is like sharing without the faces of Facebook. All right, it's Pinterest sharing their stuff without the face of Facebook.
Right.
I would say it's sharing and it's also like collecting.
What do you do? Can you buy stuff?
No, it's like
It's like
Can you collect images?
It's really popular with women. Like 83% or 93% of it are decided women.
Price that shit on there?
Yeah, you can, there's kind of.
So maybe the question to ask is really, what is the product? Is the website the product, or is something on the website like some?
Well, as with all three things, the people are the product, eventually,
But like in house, are they sort of
Customers are the advertisers.
Are they optimizing? Are they optimizing people to do some actions and then get them invested in the website? Like it's happening.
And also,
I think they want us to
I
sign.
didn't want you to, I didn't want you to click on the ad. It looks like embedded ad.
Your house?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to products on house, you can buy stuff on house, right?
I'm not sure how it works actually.
Okay.
And
So
we're,
this is the.
That looks familiar.
and I wonder if somebody can just walk us through kind of the last component of the hook model, the habit formation. So we've kind of walked through.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Variable reward is the I'm feeling lucky button on Google when it
Okay.
first launched.
Okay.
So Google Boost.
Tell us just a little bit more about what you need specifically.
When Google first launched, it had the search, it was a very simple page, it had the search bar, but next to the search bar, it had a button that you click on that said, I'm feeling lucky. And so you enter in your search criteria, hit, I'm feeling lucky, and it'll take you to some website. So you don't know what that website is, but you're very satisfied that your search was, you know, it was pulled up something that was relevant to what you wanted.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It was just.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is perfectly. I'm just nodding. I'm agreeing with you.
Did you feel rewarded?
Yeah.
Did you feel rewarded?
It's like Vegas.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, actually, it's funny, I don't use Pinterest, but when Julia was on Pinterest and she was scrolling down, it reminded me of, I don't know, I do other similar things on YouTube. But I felt the hook. I felt like, that's junk, that's junk, that's junk, maybe there's something good, maybe there's something good, maybe there's something good. That's the variable reward that I have. It's like, if you're, I guess the idea is you go to a website and everything would equally, like, you like all of it equally. It's like, predictable.
Probably doubling down on 20 things.
Like what? That we did.
But don't people follow people on, you know, kind of fashion news and stuff on Pinterest?
Yeah, you can follow.
So if you find somebody's style that you kind of like or identify with, you probably.
They could try to get you to do that.
That's what they're doing.
if you sign with Facebook still, they'll immediately assume that when you're friends with them, Facebook is also like their parent, that you're somewhat interested in what they're looking at. And so they'll use it to populate their.
I think they have like categories and stuff too.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, your friend Debbie has this collection on wedding dresses.
Right.
Comment on that, and it'll try and get you involved
It
immediately.
doesn't recommend other people or other people follow?
If you go industry, it will start to do that.
I guarantee you.
Like a lot of interior design proposing, like, to share fashion.
Well, in that sense, it's already different, because a house, I mean, you're an architect, right, so you probably
people on there, the designers probably use house for lead generation. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why architects and interior designers put up all these photos and stuff on there to try to get leads.
Right.
So what's your investment in, as a user in house?
Not well. It's not a huge investment. You're trying to get to the investment part. I put an initial, fill that out like a, what do you call it? Profile. Put up the pictures and that's- So it's not an ongoing.
It looks like if you sign up, you can design your home. Is there some sort of investment in me being able to drag and drop things into some layout of a home to design my home?
Well, you can make collections, that's what they call them. Ideas.
Sure you want to sign
You can make a bunch of different collections. One to make your kitchen, one to make your second home.
I was just gonna say, if you have no hesitation about clicking on the blue button, apparently you're young at heart. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, then.
You can essentially imagine a house is like pretty much Pinterest for homes, where you have a board that is your bedroom and all the stuff that you want to put your bedroom with, you can throw in, versus another board for your kitchen and living room and so on. The model actually maps fairly well in terms of use cases, but as we're talking about, it's highly different markets and goals.
Let's try to tie it together a little bit though. Doug, are you a heavy user of house, would you say, or?
No,
are you something like that?
When you were talking about investment, I mean, I just
Sure.
had an example in the, what's some examples of the book, I guess, and you have all your stuff in Google Mail, and you want to switch to some other mail system, then you've got, it's just too much inertia to shift over.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of investment I think is talking
That's an inertia for shifting over, as opposed to how frequently you use something. I think we're here tonight trying to understand a little bit better why we use certain things so frequently, sometimes without even thinking about it. This will happen with email, right? Like you wake up in the morning, you make coffee, or you're supposed to like look at your calendar or prepare for your meeting. All of a sudden, you're writing emails. Why are you doing that? but this happens, and so I think the hooked model and some of these components that we talked about tonight help us articulate. And of course, the book itself goes into deeper research background. But I suspect when you're talking with the teams, you're not really going to be citing the Milner experiment so much as just the dynamics that we've uncovered through these terms and through these kind of quadrants that we've talked about of trigger, action, reward, and investment. It's very important. Please.
For you to do it like a part of recently, I mean, we're the most challenging of the book model. You found like, is it the investment side that's lacking, the application, more product, or is it a trigger, or what's the one that you're like, oh, after this so quick, you can go back and look make this better.
What are you building? If you're building a social tool, it's far easier to get people to come back because you have this really strong emotional connection to a trigger. So like, comment on your wedding photo. It's like, oh, I'm probably going to look at that.
Where do you struggle with like personally, or like have you seen like our project or fundraising work? This I wasn't aware of it before. I didn't. We could put a little bit more research or attention on that.
I actually think triggers is one of the hardest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless you're building a really strong social connection. It's just really hard to get people to care about what you're trying to get them to do.
I kind of agree with that because I started on the side project got my reviews app for movies and restaurants, and I came across this whole model, way after I started that. Yeah. And then I think back, wait a second, like how many people actually get triggered by that?
Totally validate that before you go ahead.
There was an app that Yahoo, it came out, and it was like Shazam for TV, and it let people or just in Shazam, it lets you listen into now. It was wonderful. Into now. They let people listen.
Actually, Facebook just added that feature.
Oh, okay. Without having, without allowing people to sign in, it lets you know what's going on. You're like, oh, okay. And now if you want to go further, then you have to, select back to, I want to see the sample, I want to know advertising before I have to do it. I remember that. But yeah. Let's go sample.
They killed that app, didn't they?
Yeah, they bought it.
Yeah.
After they paid about $30 for it, and then List came in and they kind of faded it black.
For that kind of money, they weren't buying product, they were buying people.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is pre List. Yeah.
So they probably didn't know what they were doing.
Oh, so that's my space.
One thing, there was one thing I just wanted to mention. Is it Steve?
Yeah.
You made a comment earlier on about the role of content. And the one thing that I just sort of dawned on me from looking at the two comparisons is that Houzz has much more in the way of content in the sense of, written words, whereas Pinterest is 99% visual.
Actually, it's interesting, because another site, actually the one that I found the most interesting that they mentioned in this book, it was all words. And it was Stack Overflow. And that's a really excellent site. I mean, to me, actually, of all the sites that I've seen, it's probably my favorite one. And the reason why is because, I guess the guy who was talking earlier about business models is not here. But it's a template. It is a model of itself. That same Stack, there are affiliate sites of Stack Overflow for everything from religion to golf to you name it. And to me, it's just perfect how they did it. It was just so great. And now I see some shortcomings in it, but I really like what they did with that.
Is it all user generated or is it true?
It is all user generated. And the way that you vote people, you build up your reputation and then basically what happens is after you get some points, then you can edit others' comments. And really, I think it's just really well done all around.
Steve, does it have any habit? Have you continued to go to that?
It's funny because no, and I was actually looking at, because I'm developing another site, and one that I'm hoping that will, people will be habitual for some users, and I look at Stack Overflow and I see some things lacking. For one, it's good that they associate tags with comments, which I like, but what's missing, I think, is there's still, it's too open-ended, there's not a great structure. So for example, if Stack Overflow is about code, and what I didn't see, I could put tags associated, but then if I click on tags, I drill down and I see, literally you can have over 1,000 questions under some topics. And to me, I think it's much better than a user forum, which I hate user forums. Okay, but I see some things that can be improved, and part of it is the site that we're creating is better than user. It's for a specific problem, but there's some things that I like better about that I think could be done better to make it more interesting and quicker to find relevant information. So, for example, like what maybe for example, what I might do to it is I might have I have to think about this, but for coding, I will definitely have by language. And then what I would probably do is they'll have by, maybe like, I don't know, objects and then errors, I don't know, like I said, to me it's just lacking a certain structure.
I think
there's two different uses.
It's still good, it's still good.
I think there's two different models for Stack Overflow. For you, where you're like, I need to find answers to the questions I ask.
Right.
And there's other people who are like,
They may want to browse.
I want, what was that?
They want to browse.
No, I don't think anybody browses to
Yeah.
Stack Overflow. That does not exist.
Yeah.
They're like, I have this problem, I need to find answers, search, right? And then there's the other use case, which is people who are like, I know my stuff, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to have an account, and then I'm going to answer questions because I want to be looked at as a professional who knows his stuff.
If you look at
Yeah, right.
the top people on Stack Overflow who are answering questions, they're getting job offers from recruiters specifically because you're in the top 2% of all the people that answer Python questions.
That's awesome.
And that is like,
so there are two different
that's a huge
models.
thing.
I have a question, because, the reason I read this, and it actually worked out perfect because I was at a Lean Startup event last week, and I was explaining one of the problems that I have with this website that I've been working on. And then one of the guys recommended you should be hooked. So literally last week, and so I read it just I started on Sunday and then I finished it on Tuesday, and so it was to solve this specific problem. I was wondering if y'all would be willing, if I could show you this site, and you'd be willing to give me feedback on the site, and I can explain to you what the site is.
Can I bring it up here?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the URL?
It's www.applied3dprinting.com/beta.
Lyle, are you a developer?
No.
No?
I have lots of friends.
So I use Stack Overflow, and then your use case is exactly pretty much right.
Yeah, that's it.
They kind of like the business model that was really worked well with SEO.
So I'm
it's
all
a
the
SEO.
Exactly.
So basically, what we're trying to do here is, so of course, so for me, I'm so excited about 3D printing because it's such a game changer. You can, if you look at it like this, the digital economy is about 20% of what the entire GNP, right? Entire output. I've seen various estimates, so let's say it's a quarter. But then most physical goods take up about the other 3/4. So for the first time, you can basically, the digital and physical can become one. I can take stuff from my screen and I can print it out. Now there's all sorts of value that can come from that. And so to me, one of the most important things is to understand how I can use it. There's so many different ways that you can use it. And so the thought is that basically what we've created here is an online database of crowdsourced content. So basically, because again, innovation can happen all over the place. For example, I saw that one really smart thing, you never think about it. This guy in a wheelchair, he created these blocks that he takes around with him in his wheelchair, and when he gets around the curve with no ramps, he puts the blocks down and takes his wheelchair over. And literally, there's innovation happening everywhere that can happen. And so the idea is to capture this. There's no way a news organization can capture it. But then again, you compare it to like a user forum, and I just can't stand user forums because you navigate all the way around. And it's like you see like, okay, there's 1,000 threads here, and I don't want to waste my time. So basically, the idea is that there's two categories of people that I think about. One are those people who don't know what they're doing. They're browsing. Okay, so you can browse. You can look here. The idea is that the highest rated use cases will filter. Will be shown. And then so that's one thing, just browsing. And then I can browse like there. I can browse by solution area up there if I go up top. I can browse by click on any one of those. And then I can sort. And then I can look. But everything has a picture and then there's text, and I can sort it. And then also people can rate. The idea is, of course, that the top, the highest rated ones. It's like those are the ones that may pay most attention. But then, if you click, what makes this unique is if you click on any one of these, for example, and some have more data than others, there's this basically metadata. And so, because if you take any kind of complex technology, there's multiple variables, right? Like 3D printing, for example, there is the hardware. There is potentially what kind of software you're using, like what modeling tool. Then there is what materials you're using. And then also there could be, you know, could be other things. I mean, what's, you know, for example, well, it's mainly those three, but these things, there's these kind of variables that it's hard to capture in just a one field search. I mean, you could, but it makes it much easier. Well, also there's a normalization that comes by putting these fields here in the first place to encourage people to fill them out. And so the idea is it's complex and to capture these two fields that are basically in a database. So then I can see these, and then what also possible is we go up to the search up there, and you click on advanced. I can then start doing outsource cool stuff like you know, for example, show me the solutions built by Stratasys 3D printers, or you know, those things used with NetFab, you know, to model. What are all the use cases? So it enables me to more quickly, or if I'm an orthopedic surgeon, you know, show me those things that were used in orthopedic surgery. You know, so it makes it faster for me if I'm in a future to find stuff, and I can do it precisely. And then with so many stars and so many other things. So you know, so again, it's really fundamentally, to me, it's about information sharing and information exchange, and for multivariable complex things. And
who's your user? Is it the orthopedic surgeon, or is it the user trying to?
So we have two types of users in my mind. There's two types of users in my mind. There's the consumers, you know, the producers of the content, and the consumers. And the producers of the content would be, there could be various types of people. There could be people for social recognition, maybe that want to post. There could be companies that want to show cool things that they've done, you know, so that, you know, others might contact them.
Do you sell any design?
Not right now. The goal is primarily now, what might we? Absolutely. But to start with, it's all about information exchange. So, you know, what we're trying to do is help people realize the possibilities, and then connect them with people that you know.
But you're not actually addressing like a user specific need. So if I, for example, if I have a 3D printer at home, I have a specific model of 3D printer.
Yeah.
So I want to know what can I do with that.
Right.
That's what he's
That's
saying.
what I'm saying. You would start there.
Yeah. But if I'm an orthopedic surgeon, as you mentioned, you know, I have specific needs and requirements there. So like I need to know where can I get this sourced?
Right.
If you put yourself.
So
maybe, is it going to meet various requirements? Can I actually use this in orthopedic surgery, or am I going to get my license revoked?
Well, right. Well, okay.
So a completely different user
case.
And that's for the orthopedic surgeon, which is a very, very specific use case, and I can imagine hundreds of thousands of others.
For the orthopedic surgeon who also owns a 3D printer.
Yeah. Well, the thing
That's very
is,
specific.
well, absolutely, no question. And you bring up a good point, and what I would say is this, is the way that we would start is that you would find something, and then from there, we would put a link to so for example, University of Michigan is doing a lot of stuff with medicine, with operations, and 3D printing.
So without getting too specific, I guess there's two things that jump out to me. One, you said, I think, rather than the people I've spoken to that have this problem thing.
Right.
And that's not to be like condescending or anything, but that's a huge mistake to make, and you should really take a step back and make sure you're talking to people.
Right.
And also the fact that you're not narrowing anything. I mean, the hardest thing to do is to focus.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine has this technique. It's a dump and sort. It's a specific technique for brainstorming, where you take 10 post-its, you write an idea on each one, and then you pick the top 5. You like good ideas, better ideas, and then you physically rip up the good ideas, and you leave the better ones. You have a bunch of ideas. A lot of them are good. Some are better.
Yeah.
And a specific phrase when you rip up the other ones is that's the sign of focus. I think your huge problem, you're not selling any of it. I don't mean that in a
Listening to you and looking at this and knowing all the buzz around 3D printing and the whole maker movement, I'm involved in that. Slowly. 3D users, user A, enthusiasts, excuse me, people who already have, that are part of the maker movement, whether it's Arduino or MakerBot or whatever that is, they have that. User 2, the professional who is looking for something specific, and they may or may not have a device, they need instruction, a la Stackflow, to drill down exactly what they need. User 3 is the curious enthusiast that wants to get into this space and learn about it.
Yeah.
I think those paths are ones that could lead to Nirvana, and you provide signposts along the way that
That's
the
very
things to
good.
gather information, as well as become a reseller of other entities, products, and services. So you now become the repository of those 3 use cases.
Right.
Just cursory information, just looking at from the user experience.
Is anybody else doing anything with this?
No, I mean, there's a lot of news websites and there's also websites that ask you to post objects. Like there's Thingiverse, there's
I started last week, that's selling. I heard a pitch last week that the DC said, say, I want to talk to you, last Thursday, down the street, and they are selling materials for 3D printing and hoping to be the crowdsourced for materials, as well as people who have 3D printers, having them as service agents, like directing business to them.